We're continuing to dive deep into the LSU win over Florida. What part of the game impressed me the most, as well as what the Tigers should be doing this coming Saturday against Southeastern, and a whole lot more coming up on the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. And welcome everyone to the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. Appreciate you listening in as always. If you haven't already, make sure you go ahead and give us a follow on Spotify or wherever you get your Apple Podcasts. And welcome back to another edition of the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. Hopefully you're having a great Tuesday. And more importantly, hopefully you are excited about what we got going on here. If you haven't already, make sure you follow us on Spotify or wherever else you get your podcast from. More importantly, make sure you go check us out on social media as well and on YouTube. Just go to @Louisiana Lunch Hour. You'll find us in most places under that username. I think on X we are LA Lunch Hour because they have a character limit. Go figure. I digress. I want to get to LSU and the win over Florida because there's something I didn't necessarily get to dive deep into, and I was waiting to kind of see how things were going to go today to get into before we start turning the page and moving forward to a game against Southeastern that I think the Tigers should win by a good margin. That said, a lot of crazier things have and will happen. We need to start off and talk about what a performance we saw from the linebacking core, especially with the depth. I think that was the most impressive part of the victory against the Florida Gators. You lose your leader in Whit Weeks on literally like the fourth play of the game. And he is an absolute dog at linebacker. Losing him hurt a ton. It's a next man up mentality. And I think Devon Keys proved something in this win over Florida. The defense overall looked fantastic. Obviously, Wes Weeks is another week where he looked very solid. 12 tackles, 4 solos, and a TFL to boot. But you have to give a ton of credit to Devon Keys, a guy who hadn't gotten a whole lot of snaps in the first couple weeks of the season. Now he got elevated up because of a situation, and he looked great. 14 total tackles, 6 of those solo, half a sack, and a tackle for a loss. A really good day for the young man, and he was named the SEC Defensive Player of the Week. I think it's justified, the love that he got for sure. But again, Wes Weeks low-key played extremely well. Even the other Weeks brother got some action as well. Would be great to see all three of them out there, but it is what it is. I think we are starting to see this linebacking core that I feel like is probably one of the most underrated parts of LSU's game this season, because they're able to get pressure and they got it done in spades in that game, even without their megastar in Weeks, which is a impressive feat unto itself. Again, this is an LSU team that is known to be called DBU. And I think if not for Devon Keys' performance, you would have seen Deshaun Spears being named the SEC Defensive Player of the Week with 2 interceptions, 70 yards, and that pick 6, which looked great. 2 of 5, on Saturday night. But Devon Keys absolutely deserved the love, and it's something that we talk about with DBU. I think the linebacker position is going to be something to watch to see how much better it gets over the years, because we've had some good linebackers in the past, namely Devin White from not too long ago. But I think LSU's not necessarily known for having like absolute dogs in that linebacker position. The Weeks brothers are kind of bucking that trend, and now Devon Keys, and I'm sure he's going to get a lot more cookies before too long, especially this coming weekend when they play Southeastern. I think he needs to be the answer for this team going forward. Again, linebacking core probably is one of my most impressive takeaways from the win over Florida, besides the 5 interceptions, because I think it's not par for the course, but we are so used to talking about DBU, but it's the depth at linebacker when you run into a situation where Whit Weeks exits early. Wes Weeks, he got hurt late in that ball game. Hopefully he's good to go for the game against Ole Miss. Because I'm not one to look too far ahead. I'm not a player on the team, but I will look ahead to the next matchup because that is going to be one of the most important games you have all year. Can that defense hold down a high-powered offense that you've struggled against over the last couple of years in Ole Miss? Can you do that in about 2 weeks' time? They're going to have a hell of a ball game against Tulane. I'm going to be having my eyes focused on that one at 7 o'clock on a Saturday night. So make sure, or excuse me, it's 2:30. I'll definitely keep my eyes on that game at 2:30. And then they'll be playing again at 2:30 against LSU on the 24th. So I think there's no excuse for some Cajuns fans to make their way over to Cajun Field, Our Lady of Lourdes Stadium, for the game against Marshall. Hopefully fans will show up for that game. We'll talk about them in just a little bit. But I want to kind of move ahead to the game against Southeastern, mainly because of what Brian Kelly said to the media earlier today. I want to get to what Brian Kelly said during his time with the media yesterday afternoon, right around lunchtime, because he basically admitted that Nussmeier is injured. He's dealing with a torso injury, which we all kind of knew already. Because here's the thing that I feel like a lot of people are forgetting is that he's been dealing with this since fall camp very early on. And Brian Kelly said, the priority is to get him healthy. And that's the right way to say it. That said, I think he's doing it the wrong way. Why do I think that? Simply because when you look at what LSU has at quarterback in this game against Southeastern, it's a relatively meaningless contest. You don't necessarily need him to be out there for that game and risk further injury or possibly being out long term. Let him rest against this team. I feel like you could do just fine with your backup quarterback. Let's see what he can do and start working on the run game as well. Caden Durham looked good, 93 yards off of 15 carries, but you didn't have a whole lot of anything else of note. Jawan Johnson had 4 carries, 0 yards. Everybody else didn't get more than 5 yards rushing. So a lot of it was on Caden Durham, and he looked better. But I think this is a perfect opportunity to really see what you can do with the run game to get it better before a game against Ole Miss. Because if they know that the best you can do is a little over 200 yards and a touchdown and a pick by Nussmeier, and that was a very, not great pass to begin with from Nussmeier on that pick, I think they're going to be able to just dismantle you defensively, and it's going to become a bit of a boat race before long if that defense can't step up in about a week's time. So you need to make sure you are ready for that game. Brian Kelly said he can't take him out to the bye week. I call BS on that. I feel like anybody could take a player out of the game if he knows that they are dealing with an injury that could take him out for a while. Because those torso injuries, depending what it is, he didn't say if it was an oblique or what, but you can tell that's going to mess with the quarterback's motion, and that may be why this LSU offense feels at least relatively lethargic after the season opener against Clemson. I mean, you look at all the talk about Arch Manning over at Texas. He looks, every time he's throwing the football, he's wincing. It looks like he's legitimately hurt. Maybe it's the new Manning face, maybe it's not. Then you look over into 3-3-7 with Walker Howard. He gets injured in the first game of the season. His oblique suffers an injury there, has to have surgery. He's done for the year. You don't want to risk losing Nussmeier for the season. So why aren't you considering at least, I'd say, play him? If you want to play him 2 or 3 series and just be like, all right, dude, we're going to call it a day on you. You handled business the best you can. We're putting another guy in there, and we'll move on and get ready for next week against Ole Miss. That's kind of what I'm thinking about it. I understand players aren't supposed to look ahead. I'm not a player. I will always look ahead to what's next for the LSU Tigers or any team for that matter. Meanwhile, we got to kind of flip it over to the New Orleans Saints because, in a word, not great Bob, because it continue to see this team deal with injuries. And they got dealt another really bad hand with a Saints rookie out for the season after losing Julian Blackman last week due to an injury. Rookie defensive tackle Vernon Broughton, he's out for the rest of the year with a hip injury. The third round draft pick is getting multiple opinions on if surgery is required, but he showed a lot of potential in the debut, and it's continuing to be just a brutal beat for this Saints franchise to see these injury woes continue to pop up, and hopefully they can figure out who can get things done in that defensive line spot to take over for Broughton. I wouldn't be surprised if Christian Boyd is a part of that number, but it's going to be an uphill climb if you're the New Orleans Saints because you continue to be bit by the injury bug in the worst way. We talk about it a lot with the offensive line. Trevor Penning didn't play again on Sunday. Who knows when he's going to be ready to go? You've been dealing with a lot of your O-line depth has taken a massive hit over the last couple of games. And I'd say since last season with these struggles you've had. And I think that's also a big reason why we haven't seen the Saints get a win to start the 2025 season. Again, you're 0-2 for the first time since 2017. Spencer Rattler is 0-8 as a starting quarterback. And I think a lot of people are at least somewhat considering the idea of moving on and going ahead and putting Tyler Shutt in that spot. I'm not necessarily sure I'd be ready to do that. At least not yet. Because honestly, you look at the numbers PFF is showing, and again, PFF doesn't tell you the whole story, but PFF is showing that Spencer Rattler looks like one of the best players on this team on the offensive side of the football, which is all you want if you're the Saints, right? You want to see what he can do. And you've shown a lot of good things when it comes right down to it. You were seeing a lot of positive things from this Saints defense. And the offense is getting a little bit better. Now, if Jawan Johnson can catch the ball more frequently, then yeah, we are talking about a whole different situation. And I'm not going to ride him too much on that. Again, some of those incompletions, some of those quote unquote drops, not necessarily drops when you go look back at the film. Some of those were just very well defended plays. I'm not going to call some of those drops. Maybe you will. I'm just basing it off of what I'm seeing. That said, you got a tough game against the Seattle Seahawks in Seattle. You are going to be just behind the 8 ball tremendously if you start off 0-3 and Spencer Rattler sitting at 0-9 to start his career. I'm hoping he can get it together, but you're going to have to rely a lot on that defense to keep you in that ball game, a lot like what they were this past Sunday against the 49ers. Because I was talking with some coworkers about the game yesterday morning, and they were like, man, it was very competitive. I'm like, I understand that it was very competitive, but it was more or less the same thing that I saw last weekend, just a little bit more points on the board. And you didn't miss a fairly easy touchdown near the end zone off of a really good play, really good drive towards the end of the first half. You just couldn't seal the deal because offensive line kind of folded in that last drive. Hopefully they can kind of get that part fixed as well. The rookie out of Texas, he looks pretty solid. So hopefully he can stick around on this franchise because at the end of the day, you look at what they've done in the past and not too distant future, not too distant past, with guys like Trevor Penning, who have been relatively green. You haven't seen a whole lot of like greatness out of the offensive line picks that they've got in the last couple of years. And hopefully Kevin Banks does indeed fill out that spot and play that role very well. Time will tell. It'll wrap things up with a look at the Cajuns. I've talked about it a lot, and I think there's a lot of woes concerning this passing game or lack thereof. If you look back at the game on Saturday against the Mizzou Tigers, and Coach Des said during the press conference on Monday afternoon, right around lunchtime, basically, we didn't lie down. They just got outclassed in that game, and they did. It was from the word go, and we all knew what the end result was going to be before the game even started. It's a lot like watching a WWE fight. You know what the end result is going to be 9 times out of 10, especially watching a Raw main event. Just saying. But I think we expected maybe a little bit more fight, a little more gumption. But when you get outclassed the way that they did, it's like, yeah, I hear you, but you should have tried to at least make an attempt to be good. Lo and behold, that didn't happen. And when you have 4 passing yards, I think it is going to bring up a very tough conversation that we need to have about what this team is going to look like as we continue to progress. We get out of the month of September and then into October. And one of the players that I think we need to have a serious conversation about is Shelton Sampson. He's had way too many drops, and I get it. Football is a very tough sport. I feel like some catches I probably could make, and I'm far from an athlete, but I think some of the plays that Shelton Sampson's trying to make and they're not going in, I'm beginning to wonder, and I talked about this a little bit on the pod yesterday, is the theory that Sampson has the yips. And I don't know how to fix that, because every time a ball's thrown to him, it feels like more often than not, he is dropping it. He's got stone hands. And I understand it's not, the 90s where you can get away with putting stickum on your hands. So you need to figure something out if you're the Cajuns. And I'm wondering if you go ahead and tell them, just lay off for a week or two and get your mind right, because we need you to start catching balls. He hasn't caught too many of them in his career with the Louisiana Raging Cajuns, and hopefully him and Daniel Beal can build a chemistry during practice this coming week before they take on Eastern Michigan to wrap up their non-con slate and then make their way back home to wrap up the month of September. I just feel like I'm not 100% sure we see that happen, just because the offense has kind of left a lot to be desired simply because of the fact that they don't have a reliable, consistent passing game. It feels like when I saw Daniel Beal play, not this past weekend, but the weekend before, in his first game as a starter, he had time in the pocket. And again, you're playing against the SEC. I get it. But you have to be able to figure out what your read is straight away and not worry about it. And figure out what your best bet is and run with that. That's going to be the biggest thing I think the Cajuns are going to have to deal with over the next few weeks. Is see what you can do with Daniel Beal, but always have Lunch Winfield at the ready. I think he's got potential, but I'm not sure he's ready to be that guy yet full time. Didn't see a whole lot from him in the last 2 games relative to how he performed with the passing game. In terms of the run, he's a beast, and he could be even better as the season progresses. But with everything else you're dealing with, you have to figure out what you're doing with your quarterback in Daniel Beal, and if you want to get ready to move on to Lunch Winfield, because I would not be surprised if at one point during the season, maybe even homecoming, that Lunch would have the chutzpah to go ahead and throw down and say, I want to be the starting quarterback for this game, and pull a Levi Lewis. Because if you don't remember, Levi Lewis, basically for a minute, he kind of teased wanting to transfer during the tail end of the HUD era. That's why he got in that homecoming game and helped lead that team to a really nice victory. One of the few positive things to come out of that particular season for the Cajuns, just before HUD exited stage left all the way back in 2017. Can't believe that's been like 8 years. 2017 was such a different time. And that team, relatively speaking, gave up on HUD going back to that year in 2017. Just after the whole stuff in 2016 happened, after the election, that team straight up gave up. And lo and behold, they wound up getting one of the best coaches in program history, bar none. Like, he is number one on that list simply because of the fact that the 2020 and 2021 season did better than any other coach in the modern era. Hopefully they can kind of right the ship, but I think Eastern Michigan is going to be a challenge nonetheless. And then you've got Marshall, that is without a lot of the players that you dealt with last season. And I'm hoping the Cajuns don't play Thunderstruck at one point in that game, because honestly, I said it back in December and I'll say it again. I'm kind of good not hearing Thunderstruck for at least another 6 months. But that's going to do it for the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. We will be back tomorrow with another edition breaking down some more in-depth stuff about the games we just saw this past weekend and start really turning the page over to the big matchups this coming weekend. Of course, we're going to get into Tulane, Ole Miss, and a whole lot more. So make sure you keep it locked right here to the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast each and every weekday, dropping right before 12 o'clock so you can enjoy that while you're on your lunch break. And then, best part is, as soon as you're done, you can go back to work. So I'm about to get back to work. You enjoy the rest of your day. Go ahead and follow us on social media. Just search Louisiana Lunch Hour and subscribe to us over on YouTube. Same exact name. We got some cool exclusives going up there as well. So take it easy, everybody. We'll talk to you tomorrow on the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast.